Dear colleagues, we continue working today in the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. And now we discuss the launching of the online information about unreliable data in the declarations of the bureaucrats. We have Oleksandra Drik, we have Yegor Sobolev, an MP, and Maria Zemlyanska, investigative journalist. Good morning. Thank you for attending our briefing about non-reliable or true information in the declaration, in the declarations of bureaucrats, and this system was intended to validate the declarations and to reveal the signs of corruption. In line with the Lustration law, the checks or assessments of the personal belongings, personal property which belongs to the bureaucrats, we decided that only validation of such information via a declaration of paid taxes will be more reliable. So, in parallel with the work on electronic system of electronic declarations, we developed our own online project which allows to get a signal about improper facts which were obtained in course of submission of electronic declaration by bureaucrats. This is designed with the purpose to allow people to see this irrelevant information or unreliable information. Yesterday, the electronic declaration system was launched. As of now, no declarations are published in that system. And unfortunately, there are many technical issues around the system which proves that there is a sabotage in application of this system. Also, we understand that when the parliament will resume its work after vacations, there would be an attack on the electronic declaration system in order to diminish its anti-corruption effect. That's why I believe that civil society and journalists should be able to validate those declarations to assess the reliability of the information shown in declarations. Now on the screen you see a teaser showing how the system is working. Actually, it is well designed for convenience of the users. At the first step, you have to fill the information about each official. For us, it's important to get some tips about future inconsistencies in declaration. Also, this form contains about the person who fills this request for information. During last 2 years, we received hundreds of requests from people and information about corruption. That's why for us it's very important to have information about this witness who knows about the fact of corruption. In order to protect you, we have our servers in the United States. The system is protected, and please do not fear that your data will be stolen by offenders. This system itself is based on the materials which we collected jointly with the investigative journalists, and we well-tuned our informational materials for the convenience of the users. First, these are 4 series of instructions how to act with the 4 public online registers about personal property, about personal assets, about personal cars, and land ownership, also, there is an instruction to what pay attention in course of work with our database. Now, I would like to introduce Maria Zemlyanska, an investigative journalist who is well experienced in this information, and who also would validate and double-check all the information which arrives to us in order to be able to bring to responsibility those bureaucrats who supplied untruthful information in the declarations. I am Maria. I think that the property validation of personal belongings is the most maybe interesting part of the lustration procedure. I believe that this very database and this very data would allow us to understand many things more clearly. As we have seen, many officials do not register their personal assets, personal belongings on their names, and we are unable to double check what they really possess in real lives. And that's why I think that this form would be very useful because any person who has gotten information about the bureaucrat, where he lives, what car he actually uses, is able to add this entry and supply this information to us. I believe that we will be able to verify the information which you will enter to this database. We also have huge databases of information about those bureaucrats who provide untrue information about their real assets, which is formed based on such private information from people. So we, thus working together, will be able to move forward. Thank you. Now I would like to give...
I would like to give the floor to Yegor Sobolev, the head of Anti-Corruption Committee. He was working on launching the declarations and on registers, and he can tell us in more detail why it is so important for the citizens to get involved into this anti-corruption activities. Thank you. In fact, I just wanted to tell, please, save yourselves from the idea everything's fine. Someone launched the system of electronic declaration, and tomorrow all the civil servants will be under control, all their assets and property will be transparent, and those who lie in their declarations will be taken to the court. This will not happen. Oleksandra is right when she said there's not a single electronic declaration. The system is working so that even the journalists see how badly it's done. The civil servants will be trying to hide their property. Part of them left the positions not to declare. Others will register their assets as assets of some relatives so that no one notices that they have this property. And there's no big legion of Ukrainian judges who are waiting till when will we start giving sentences to these corruptionists. What will continue is the sabotage against this law. What is the sense of our today's meeting? Why did we come to you? All this work now can and should do the citizens. The legislation was passed for the citizens. Oleksandra was right when she said from the times of starting the lustration, the fact when a civil servant cannot explain where his property comes from, this is the reason to dismiss such a civil servant. But the administration does not check all these declarations, and they have never been checking them. And all this legislation on openness of registers, on electronic declarations of civil servants, on criminal responsibility for lies was done just so that the sabotage of the state bodies could be replaced by the citizens, by the NGOs, the journalist investigators, or just citizens who understand that their judge bribe, prosecutor bribe will not be dismissed if they do not dismiss him. If they think that someone else will dismiss them, then the general prosecutor will be a bribe for a long time. And my request is, this is the weapons that we developed for all of us so that we can do it. Now the law is in our hands, the information is in our hands, all the declarations will be open in the state register, all the registers of openness are all the registers are open, and now you have the technology how you can this information about lies to give to us. Please fill in this form on the website of Hromadski on the Public Lustration Committee. We will take the we will share the biggest stories with journalists, investigators, so that they make the story public. And my committee on fighting corruption in Verkhovna Rada will be the place in Verkhovna Rada. We will demand that these violations are not ignored, but they get to the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. And the main thing, so that they get to the court, and so that the sentences are passed. Now the sentencing any civil servant to criminal responsibility opens up the possibility of special confiscation. According to the article, inability to explain the origin of the property. So we do have the law, we do have the instrument, and now it depends on whether the citizens will be lazy or the citizens will understand that this way we can combat against the bribers and corruptionists. Any questions? Now the questions, please put them briefly and introduce yourselves. Ilya Lukash, Новое время. The first question. In your briefing, you said that 48 MPs addressed the Constitutional Court appealing against the law. It was about the law on lustration. The Constitutional Court, yes. I can tell you even more interesting thing. We analyzed who was signing. In order to stop declarations and lustration, they united into association the prohibition for not to prohibit. Last week there was an investigation, very important, that we did, and we were checking 3 plots of land. Around them there are owners, and then 3 plots there are no owners. How is it possible? And the most important thing, how will you know that the civil servant is using this property? He, for example, went there twice or how many times? First of all, about Constitutional Court, the second about registers and the checking. Constitutional Court is one of the 3 key threats to the legislation on electronic declaration. First, it's canceling criminal responsibility. If you pay attention to the applications made, to statements made by the senior civil servants, they say that amendments to the legislation are to be introduced. The second one is so-called zero declaration that was discussed in spring. And now there is a big probability that such a zero declaration can come up as the way to give amnesty to capitals of civil servants.
В тому, що один раз подається нульова декларація.
Which means that the civil servants provide the information about their assets that were received by any way, and this was the idea that came up in spring. Now there's no registered draft, but there is a big probability that this will be one of possible ways of development. One scenario, to give amnesty to corruptionists, basically. Then Constitutional Court will, there are 48 MPs who are requesting the cancellation of different aspects. The key provisions that make electronic declaration valuable, despite the fact that a third of the judges in the Constitutional Court are the same that were working in times of Yanukovych, were helping Yanukovych. There is a big probability that a puppet Constitutional Court any moment will make a ruling that this way of declaration is illegal. You cannot appeal against the decision of the Constitutional Court. As to the second one, registers are not perfect. We also very often see this information or the lack of this information, and the only way, if half of the people were working, that someone went there and who lives there. The only way was how to write the request to geocadastre and municipal cadastres. And there are two options. If you have a cadastre number but you have no information, then indicate the cadastre number and request the information. If not, then such request looks funny. When we take the map, describe where the information is. Where there's no information, we put a question mark, and we just indicate who lives nearby, and they need to give the information. We're doing it, and we're receiving the information. It takes time, but we have no other way.
Перше, я хотів ще додати до того, що сказала Марія.
I would like to add to what Maria is saying. There are many fair, many decent citizens who are not in the registers. The registers were on paper. What was the sense of opening them so that people see that they're not there? Or, for example, the information about their property is written as registered as the property of someone else. Just look at whether your apartment, your land is registered as yours. If you see that this information is missing, you go to the Department of District Department of Ministry of Justice. If it is about the land, you go to Cadastre and you write a statement. Here are my documents, include me into the register. And what happens to, it is not easy to falsify the paper, but if the property is registered, then the citizen can be sure that his or her property will be protected. And please ensure the completeness of information. On Constitutional Court, it is important to understand that on the 30th of September, there will be, from the 30th of September, the initiated by the President amendments to the Constitution will become effective, and to arrest the judge of the Constitutional Court, you need to have the agreement of 2/3 of the judges of the Constitutional Court. It is important now for the general prosecutor to address the Parliament and the Supreme Court to arrest several judges in the Constitutional Court. And these judges have to be investigated on. One thing that is lacking is official actions from the General Prosecution Office on the 30th of September. This will be impossible to do according to new amendments to the Constitution. It is important for the public, for the journalists to ask Lutsenko what's happening with the judges of the Constitutional Court, and how to prove that a civil servant is using the property which is officially registered as the property of someone else. For that, investigation is needed. And the National Anti-Corruption Bureau is investigating such things. So your task is to monitor, to follow it up, to give all the data to the investigator detective of Anti-Corruption Bureau, and they are qualified enough. to proceed. So this is it. The next event will take place in a few minutes.
А мой танец, я же готовила номер.